I want to be respectful of your time, but there is something in the book that's kind of heavy and something that I didn't know that I want to ask you about too, because
Sure.
I do, well, I've spent a fair amount of time with military guys, specifically around PTSD and the horrible suicide rates that continue to plague men and women in the armed forces. And I'm always interested in organizations that find new ways to try and break through, to try and help these people. And there's a chunk here in the book where you talk very candidly about an attempt to take your own life. And since it's in the book, I do want to ask you about it because I know statistically there are people listening who are struggling right now with whatever. And to the extent a 91-year-old man who served five presidents might be able to offer a little insight, I'd be grateful.
Well, I was very depressed because of what had happened in Dallas, and that was in the 22nd of November, and then Mrs. Kenny and the children went to Florida for Christmas and New Year's, and I was in charge of that protection. And I saw her every day. I saw the children every day, up close and personal. And it just ate at me and ate at me that here was this widow. Her husband had been killed because we didn't do the job we were supposed to do, in my opinion. And the children are fatherless because of that same reason. And by toward the end of December, I was a real mess, and I left her at her residence there in Palm Beach, Florida, in the hands of my assistant. And I went and I had a drink at a bar called the Athletic Club. And I decided it was better that I not be any longer on this earth. And so I walked out in my suit, my regular clothes that I wear to work, and walked into the ocean with the intent of drowning myself. A police officer was called there by the owner. It turned out the police officer was somebody I knew very well. He was a motorcycle officer. And he came into the ocean and pulled me out and saved my life. Uh, I realized afterwards that it was a horrible thing that I had done, that I had broke. I was so depressed. And that's the way I'm sure many of these military people feel when they come back from an assignment in Iraq or Afghanistan or wherever they've been. And I realized that it would have been tragic for me to leave my children, my two sons, fatherless. They'd be just like Caroline and John, fatherless. And so I was very grateful that I hadn't been permitted to carry through.
Lisa, it's a hell of a thing, you know. I mean, to really ponder exactly what he just said, and obviously the first ring of people influenced are those closest to you, but think of what the country would have been denied, and you, and
59 years. 50, that was 59 years ago. So
yeah,
he would have missed out on 59 years of life. I wouldn't have these wonderful years with him. All of this history wouldn't have been shared. You know, it is kind of, I mean, well, it's tragic to think about, and there are so many people dealing with this right now, as you say. And Clint actually, has said that just talking about it and writing about it. So in the book, one of the things we find is his daily diary from 1964. And
I thought you burned all those.
he had burned all of his other notes, and he didn't realize there was this one piece left. And that was the one year that he had never wanted to talk about because it was so painful, even with me. And so in going through the diary, he again, brings back these memories. And what do you think? Was that helpful, Clint, to talk about it and
Well,
write about it?
that's what the salvation is. If you're suffering from PTSD, is what I was suffering from, not knowing. They didn't even have a name for it at the time.
Shell
But
shock.
shell shock is what it was called. But if you have that, the best thing you can do is find somebody you trust, that you have confidence in, whether it be your wife, your best friend, your minister, your rabbi, your priest, whoever it is, a teacher, and discuss and talk about what it is that's bothering you, that's affecting you. You have to really get it through to it. That's the only way you're going to get it out. And the more you talk about it, the better you're going to feel. I talked about it first time with Lisa. I had talked to the Warren Commission, but I had never talked to anybody else. Never discussed it with any, even former fellow agents, family members, nobody. I didn't want to talk about it. And I ended up in 2009 meeting Lisa. And she was the one that opened the door because I got to trust her and I could talk to her. And the more I talked and told her about what had happened, the better I felt.
But think about what you did along the way. You held on. You somehow held on. And all of the stuff that you needed to talk about, not all of it, but it sounds like a lot of it, was locked away in a trunk. The fact that you couldn't find the medal for bravery that you were awarded, again, speaks volumes to me. But the other thing, Clint, that really strikes me is I think it's very, I don't think it's uncommon for people who have gone through an experience like that to not want to talk about it. But you, being a North Dakotan, a man of a certain rectitude and courtliness, a man, like you walk right up to the mirror and you say, I'm never going to talk about this. I'm not going to write about it. You buried that stuff away somewhere deep inside, and you also put it in an old steamer trunk. And that's what I was getting at, Lisa. The metaphors here are thick and rich and kind of important because you pried open his memories in the same way you put on a pair of rubber gloves and pried open that trunk and started rooting around to see what came out. Mm-hmm. And what came out was just proof positive of a terrific life. And it's just pretty extraordinary that you hung on that long and that you had the good sense to rethink the wisdom of the vow you took. Because had you not done that, well, then maybe you still would be at the bottom of the ocean somewhere.
Very true.
And I think you're right, Mike, to think about all of the good things that he did, that one does in their life, instead of focusing on, the bad things that happen, which is what is happening with people around the world today who are struggling with this, and to just find someone who can get those memories out and make you realize you are worthy. Yes. You are worthy.
Yes.
You
I mean, I
valued.
think everyone I know who is wrestling with this will ultimately go back to a terrible day, a terrible moment. Maybe it's in combat. Maybe they saw their friends blown up. Maybe 1,000 different things. But you can almost always distill it to a moment. And obviously, Clint, we all know what your moment was. And so, again, I'm saying the same thing over and over in a slightly different way, but it's just unbelievable to me that you spent 50 years not talking about it, then got to the place where that's the only thing you could talk about. And now, at 91, you're finally at a place where a wonderful book exists that's a tribute to everything else in your life but that. And that, to me, is a testament to what can happen if you just hang on.
If you like what you heard,
and even if you don't,
won't you please,
pretty please, subscribe.
Well, I hate to beg and I hate to plead, but please
Pretty freaking please, please,